There's no argument that the SEC is the king of college football conferences, so it makes sense that others might want to join in on the fun. News dropped today of two teams who might just be entertaining that very idea. Let's discuss who that is, if it's a good idea, and how it might even affect the Auburn Tigers. My name is Kyle, the owner and editor of the E2C Network, where the Auburn family speaks. Our content here on our podcast network and also on the YouTube channel may tend to be Auburn sports heavy, but if it's orange and blue, it's what we do. Check out the links in the description for ways to help support our content. Thank you to members of the Booster Club like Joe Rudolph who help produce videos like this. Let's break down a news story that's been kind of circulating through today. Today's actually Wednesday, the 21st of July in 2021, for those that may be watching this far off in the future. But the news broke today from a publication known as the Houston Chronicle that two Big 12 teams are now thinking about, or at least the rumor is, considering whether they want to come be a part of a super conference with the SEC and might have even reached out to the SEC themselves. Those two teams are the Oklahoma Sooners and the Texas Longhorns. Now, this is the first time that we've heard a rumor like this circulating. In fact, back when realignment was the talk of the day a few years back, there was speculation, would Oklahoma join? We never thought that Texas would at the time, but Oklahoma seemed like a possible addition to the SEC that might be coming down the pipe. Now it seems that both are having a conversation with the SEC. SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey was reached out to for a comment, and he chose not to make a comment on this, or at least the speculation of it. Two things that I can think about when you get a response of no comment. One, it's true, and they don't want to push the rumor any further right now until things become finalized. Two, maybe there is something related to this type of conversation, realignment or additions to the SEC of some sort, but not necessarily what the rumor is actually inferring here. So usually that's kind of the way I take it, that a no comment means, hey, you're onto something, could be true, or maybe it's something related to it. Not really sure what to make of it, but I think personally, when I just kind of look at this news and talk about it, I think there's several ways you could go on this, and I see both sides of this equation, but I really do think this might actually be a good thing for the SEC, but also for Auburn. And let me tell you a little bit why. I kind of came up with, off the cuff here, three different takeaways from this news of why it might be a good thing for the SEC, but also for Auburn. Number one, more competition. I know it already seems like a tall task to get out of the SEC with an undefeated record, much less one or two losses these days, and it'll only get harder with that. But if you bring in more competition, you're playing against the best, which means you're going to be the best. You're already in the SEC, you're used to it, so what's two more teams to the fun, right? Couldn't be that much worse, could it? Probably, maybe so. Oklahoma and Texas are usually two very good programs. Oklahoma obviously being the more storied currently, and usually in the college playoff conversation every single year. Texas seems to always be coming back. Never know if they actually are. But the competition will be a good thing for all the SEC teams, but also for Auburn as well. I think it just, anytime you can, iron sharpens iron type of discussion. I think anytime you can get better teams in here competing on a more regular basis, it's only going to make you better. Number two, different markets. A lot of the times when I've discussed on live streams about expansion for the SEC, most people want to go to the traditional favorites, Florida State, Georgia Tech, even maybe adding a Clemson here or something like that. While I love those ideas, they don't make sense from a business standpoint. If there is an expansion to the SEC, they have to go to markets where they're not already as an influence or where they need to expand. Definitely they could expand at the Oklahoma market, not there already, continue to stretch their arm out into the Midwest towards the Western shores. At one point, maybe the SEC will stretch all the way to the West Coast. The Texas market is so big that you almost can't have enough of it. So it would make sense that if you're going to double up on a market you already have, Texas would be it. So I do think that's probably one of the reasons that the SEC might actually entertain this. From an Auburn's perspective, this is more of a chance to be seen and to spread your influence, not just in terms of going out and finding recruits out there, but to be seen on television, to go to these places more often and compete against them, thus creating more relationships with high school coaches, more relationship with athletes, and pipelines out there that could eventually develop into recruiting relationships. Auburn's already tried this past recruiting cycle under Coach Brian Harsin in his first year to kind of be a little bit unconventional and go out to the Midwest, go out to the West and find some more talent out there while they're trying to get the program back on its feet. So definitely you can see where the recruiting angle of this would be a benefit. Finally, let's talk about the big thing in the room, and that is realignment. This is where I see the ultimate benefit for the SEC, but also for Auburn. Think about it. If you add Oklahoma and Texas, that is now 16 teams in the SEC. Whew, that's a lot. But what it would do is allow an opportunity for some confusing alignment in terms of divisions to get fixed and some rivalries maybe to be renewed. Now, obviously, if you add them, this is just me speculating. It's not necessarily how they would do things. I mean, my gosh, they put Missouri in the, in the West, or excuse me, the East, for crying out loud in the first time they did this. So who says they won't mess it up again? But in theory, here's what I say you do. You add them to the West. Obviously, they're on the Western side. It would make sense. Both of them together, they still get to play each other in the division. You then move Missouri, here's a novel concept, actually out to the West where they belong. Then you move Alabama and Auburn to the East. What this was essentially set up is a scenario where it is finally somewhat balanced, at least in modern times. Things will change, obviously. Teams will come and go. Programs will rise and fall. But think about it this way. That gives you 4 major programs currently on each side of a division. In the West, you would then have Oklahoma, Texas, LSU, and Texas A&M as perennial powers, always competing for the divisional title. Then you throw in Mississippi, Mississippi State, Arkansas, and Missouri. They'll do things every once in a while, but honestly, the other 4 are the ones that are going to be the power. On the East side, it would be Auburn, Alabama, Georgia, and Florida as the perennial powers, and wow, what a group that is. I mean, honestly, these are the ones that are typically in the conversation every single year. Obviously, Auburn down in a little bit of a slump right now, but they can be back up there very quickly. Then you've got the other teams that you can throw in there as well. You've got your Tennessees, you've got your Kentucky, you've got Vanderbilt, and South Carolina. Personally, I feel like that's a pretty evenly matched divisional setup there. So bringing in Oklahoma and Texas could really benefit Auburn in terms of moving over to a division where they traditionally belong more in terms of their recruiting, their geographical reach, and traditional rivalries that they had with Florida, keeping the Georgia one, and obviously redeveloping one with Tennessee as well. I think that would make Auburn fans very, very happy. Now, there are some sides of this discussion that, this may not be a good thing, and I'd love to hear from you in the comments section if you don't agree with this, or even if you do and kind of agree with me. But let's keep the conversation going down there. Let me know what you think about the rumor and the possibility of Oklahoma and Texas being added to the SEC and how it might affect Auburn. If you enjoyed this content, please help support it by smashing that like button. And if you want more content with us, make sure that you are subscribed along with that notification bell marked so that you never miss an upload or even a live stream. There's also other ways to help support our content listed in the description below, such as the E2C Network Booster Glove. Thank you for tuning into the E2C Network, where the Auburn family speaks. War Eagle.